Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 133 on the Pranzata Podcast on YouTube. We have a returning guest today. This is the first time I've ever had a guest return this quickly because he was about 2 episodes ago. I think he was episode either 130 or 131. But this is the return of the Philly musician, also known as Death by Snuuu. So the reason I brought him back on is because he has a very interesting story to tell. And I'm like, dude, we need to get this on the podcast before we have this conversation because this is fascinating to me. So I'll explain in a second. But before we get into it, if you enjoy what you hear today, please do not forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to become a full-time podcaster as a career, and every single subscriber really helps me reach that goal. So I'd appreciate that. And again, chime in on the comment section on anything we talk about, because I would like this podcast to be one where the listeners are open to discussion. And I do respond to the listeners' comments as much as I possibly could. But all right, anyways, let's just jump right into it. So you went to a very interesting event was it last weekend or 2 weekends ago?
Indeed. So that was 2 Sundays ago.
2 Sundays ago.
About 10 days ago. Would that
yes.
Be,
so you explain to me and the listeners what the event was, and then we'll go from there. So what was the event?
Yeah. In D.C., Washington, D.C., it was Rescue the Republic rally. So this was organized by Dr. Brett Weinstein. If you don't know who that is, he's one of the people whose voices were essentially censored and silenced during COVID. When that happened, he's an evolutionary biologist. Him and his wife Heather Haying, I think, is her last name. But these two said, okay, well, they tried to make a unity movement back then. It was actually censored. Yeah. It was actually censored by definition by the powers that be, which is very strange. What their objective was to get Republicans and Democrats and even some libertarians together, find the people who speak and articulate from both groups the best, and just have them come up with a plan in unity. It was called the Unity Movement, and it got censored, which is hilarious. I think that's ironic. But they went for it again this year, and instead they just call it Rescue the Republic. They got all sorts of people on the bill to show up and speak, performances and all sorts of stuff. So everyone you love and everyone you hate, from Jordan Peterson to Russell Brand to who is it? That rapper Zuby. Is it Rob Schneider? I think his name is the guy that was there. He was basically hosting it. Jimmy Dore, he's a pretty well-known comedian. I love that guy. God, yeah. Fire and brimstone. But there were a bunch of faces on it. And I know at least, good God, 20 of the speakers I recognized. But
Tulsi Gabbard was there too, right?
Tulsi Gabbard. Yes. How could I forget?
Yeah. Okay. So one of my questions for you, and I remember thinking about this when you originally told me about the event. The event was titled Rescue the Republic. And then I thought to myself, as an American voter, I don't actually technically know or understand the definition of the word Democratic and Republican, and I don't know the history behind it. So can you try your best, because I know you've been dabbling into learning more about the history of politics lately, so you can understand it yourself. When the event is titled Rescue the Republic, what does republic mean?
So there's the crucial difference of it. So here's what people will call it. We're a democracy. You hear a lot of that lately. Right. Drives me nuts. It's like, this person's destroying democracy. This person's doing that. This person's doing whatever. And it's important to remember we're a constitutional republic. Mm-hmm. And democracy does have democracy does happen under that. But at the heart of it, constitutional republic, right? Republic because we have representatives. The founders, and as much as I can understand as I'm going through this course on the Constitution now, and it's the founders did not. They knew the problem with mob rule. Populism is a wonderful thing, but also the reason why representatives, us having the choice to elect representatives who represent our interests, they often are going to be the best of us, the brightest of us, so they can essentially be the average between the populists in representing the ideas and ideals of other people. And then also with their own intelligence and their own principles, they can marry that to it. And you send them and offer up your best. They go and they essentially vote for you. I think that's how I would describe it. But going back to what the founders knew was a problem, mob rule is if you have too many people aimed in one direction. Let's use, for example, say, pick a party. You know, things seem to be very, what's the word? People are at odds with each other. So say that the mob rule went only one way.
Okay.
That becomes an issue when you have the majority going in a way that's not going to be helpful for the society. And so when you have representatives, since it's a smaller number, in the same way that you have a general leading an army, not a bunch of individuals necessarily leading the army, it's helpful to have one person to orient the thing in one direction. That's what I can gather from it. So what you're trying to do is simplify the idea, distill down the idea, the ideals that you want from the people to be represented, instead of having everyone just chirping at the same time, which actually just complicates things.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the idea is that the republic, you're saying, is supposed to have a variety of people that are qualified to represent the average of what Americans want. And a democracy is naturally built in within that because there's several different representatives in the republic. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. So
Okay.
with us voting too, just down to the state level, I think it just makes sense. I mean, the country is huge, and it's like you go to different states, and if a state is far enough from another one, it feels like a different country, even though I have barely been to another country. So, but we're going to pretend just for this, for the idea of this. But
I mean, I've only been to a few other countries myself, but I do understand exactly what you mean. It's like there is a different feel in different states. And I have a lot, I have more things about that, but we'll get into that later about how, actually, let's just jump into right now since we're on the topic.
Yeah.
Personally, I made a video a couple weeks ago saying that I was more confused than ever about politics, that traditionally I was always a Democratic voter. And as of lately, I'm trying to come up with a term that properly describes where I'm at politically. And I think the best term I can come up with right now is politically agnostic, where I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know what to believe anymore. I think it's a gamble. I don't really trust anything I hear on the media anymore. Because of that, I'm being leaned in a new direction as opposed to the left. But at the same time, I'm also open to the possibility that could be somehow tricking me too. The whole thing is a big blur for me. But anyways, where I'm going with this, why I'm bringing this up, relates to what you said about every country being so different. I'm realizing now that a lot of the issues that I'm trying to make my political voting decisions based on what is an issue in my current life. And I wonder if the political issues I have in my current life are a reflection of where my location is. So for example, something like Roe v. Wade isn't an issue for me because abortion's legal here. Something like free speech is an issue for me because I live in a very left-dominated culture. You know, we live in a city. This is a very left-dominated culture. However, how would I feel if I lived in a completely different state? If I lived in a completely different state, maybe I would have an issue with the conservative side. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, it absolutely does. And I think that's the genius of it too, how our country is set up. It's like, ideally, you know, you would have to work to move somewhere else, but no one's holding you down physically and keeping you from going somewhere else to experience the thing. Here in this city, like you say, and in this state, like abortion, everything else, okay?
Yeah.
It's different from other places. There's so many issues that are different from other places, but that's the point. So you'd ideally be voting in favor of the culture that exists within your state.
That's what Yeah,
and I guess that's where, I don't know, maybe you would be able to speak to this too, because I feel like that's where things get sticky. At least for me, it got sticky because I didn't really make sense of the fact that there's the federal level and there's the state level.
Right.
And when you're voting certain ideas into the federal level, you're going to affect everyone, and it starts to get really weird. You know, if you're in some Bible Belt state and you're trying to push abortion on a majority of people who live there, who don't believe in abortion, it's like, I don't know. That might be a weird one to pick up because I'm a dude, and honestly, I don't have a dog in the fight. But I would say maybe something that I can speak to is like guns. It's like being upset that Texas is a gun-toting ass state. You can literally just gift someone a gun by law. You don't have to do all this wild shit. But jumping through hoops to do it. But I think it's fine. You know, that's their state. If you don't want that to happen, you can live in another state and be okay, right? But I don't know, not everyone. It seems like people vote just so emotionally on issues, especially at a federal level. They want the government to touch everything and everyone else, even if that person is removed by 1,000 miles from them.
Right.
Which is interesting because it's like, why wouldn't you just focus on the issues in your state and then you can visit other places? You don't have to have the same laws as them. It's like, I think that's the awesome part of this country is because there's so much.
As you're learning about history, was that always the plan? Because I'm not, a history buff whatsoever. But as you're learning, was that always the plan for the United States to have separate laws for each state? Like, what was the vision? Like when the Constitution was created, what was the vision for America? Did they originally want it to be separate states, different laws, or did they want something more unified? Are you aware of that?
That's something I want to be able to, let me say this first. I cannot answer that. Like with a matter of factual, like, yes, it's exactly this thing or that thing. But in as much as I can gather, it's like these people came over here, started setting up things in a certain way, and they realized, oh, cool, well, we like banging with these kind of folks, so we're gonna do our thing over here, and these folks are gonna do their thing over here, and eventually, the colonies start to grow into what we're now experiencing here as the United States.
Right.
But it's good to be united in some kind of interest. That's why we're so damn powerful. We have all these different states with different cultures, but united under the federal government. So I think it's just a matter of trying to split the difference between autonomy between the autonomy of the individual and then the individual in that community and the entire society. But trying to split the difference between that and then having a federal government on top, something that from the top down can just be the strong arm, right? It's why our fucking military, it kicked ass, not anymore, but.
That's interesting. So going back to the event, because I do want to know more about this event. So with that all being said, what is the threat of the Republic? The fact that, going back to what you're saying, mob culture, is it that mob culture is pushing the decisions and not the representatives in the Republic? Is that the idea of Rescue the Republic?
To me, so they have these 8 pillars that they started with. I would point to that. And the 8 pillars, like being things like truth. Another one of them is just like immigration and the issues with that. War is one of the things that Brett Weinstein pressed on, and he pressed on that a lot, actually. Just talking about how seriously they need to take that as war being the last resort. All sorts of things like that. But the reason why everyone was uniting under that same banner is because it's like, these are the principles we hold in common. The entire premise of the event is to find everyone from whatever political persuasion. No one cares, because at the end of the day, we're all goddamn Americans. Mm-hmm. And I cannot stress that enough. The reason why we're in this craziness today is because people aren't talking to each other.
Right.
We're demonizing half the country and thinking we can be efficient that way, that we can get things done. And what do you do with the 50% that we disagree with? Do we kill them? Do we ship them off somewhere?
Right.
I'm like, I always ask that question to myself. I'm like, what do we think we're going to do? That's a lot of people that
we're
you
stuck
think
together,
are, yeah,
right?
It's like, they're the reason. You remember they were talking about making a list of the people who voted for Donald Trump after Biden won in 2020?
No.
This was actually said, AOC was talking about this bullshit, and some other people in Congress. And it was the weirdest thing to hear, because I'm like, make a list and what? So that's the kind of creepy shit you hear, and it's like, what are we doing? And this is why that Rescue the Republic event was so important to me, because
so it's not necessarily a conservative event. It's open to everybody who wants unity. Yeah,
it's like when I went there, when I say everyone under the sun, I mean everyone under the sun was there.
Yeah,
like there were a bunch of corn-fed Southern white dudes. This one dude, I wanted his Trump hat so bad. So it was one of those black ones with the gray letters, like went hard as fuck. But they had some merch and some other stuff too. All sorts of people, no matter what color, different religions. You could clearly tell by the garb some people would wear, and then different political affiliations. All sorts of people there, and you can see people just snapping pictures because they're looking at the different groups of people who are chatting with each other. It's just like, oh, why are you here? And that's really the question. It's often, hey, what drew you here to this event? And you just have interesting conversations with folks because it's beautiful. Yeah. it's American as hell. Like this is the point.
Yeah.
It's finding out where do we align, why do we align, and what are our final causes, which I think philosophically is one of the most important things when you're trying to identify that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's one of my visions or missions even on this podcast. When I invite political speakers, I feel like the media, this sounds conspiracy theorist, but
hit me.
I do feel like the media, because I've spent a lot of time like accidentally going into different algorithms, because this year I made a decision before I'm going to vote this year. I want to fully read the left. I want to fully read the right. I want to fully understand the left and the right. And what I found was that when I would get sucked into the left's like YouTube algorithm, I would I'm like, wow, like I understand why people believe this. This is really enticing. Like this is like there's the way they present it in the media. And I've said this before on the podcast. It's like both teams, it's like they're following a superhero movie of like good versus evil, but they just have different characters. Like each one has different characters, different storylines, but it's the same formula on both sides. And what I found was that when I was listening to the left, I would get sucked into their superhero movie, and then when I listened to the right, I got sucked into their superhero movie. And now I'm just like, one of my missions on this channel is to like take the power back as a human being, and not, I feel like as human beings we need to take the power back to talk to each other, because I feel like the media is pushing us against each other, and sitting down and having these conversations face to face is our responsibility at this point. And funny enough, I think it's my next podcast episode, I'm having a friend on who we disagree on a political issue. And now this is a close friend of mine. Like we've been friends for a long time. We've played music together. He's helped me out in life situations. I've helped him out. And I'm like, I think this is going to be a really interesting podcast episode, because there's emotion attached to it. Cause it's like, I love this person. This so I don't, it's like, we're stuck together. Like he's like, if you're listening to this, you're going to be my friend, even if we hate each other after this episode. So you're stuck with me. So it's like interesting. It's like that exact same thing. And I read a quote in a book recently, and it was, I wish I could quote it perfectly, so I'm just going to paraphrase this. But she said, the media and politics has people who know each other fighting and separating due to people that don't care about us and will never meet us.
God, yes.
Yeah, I don't think I said it exactly the way she said it, but it was something along the lines of like, we're fighting over people that will never meet us, and we know each other and we love each other. These people that don't know us and don't love us, we're like loyally obeying them and not each other. And it just doesn't make any sense anymore. So I'm 100% wholeheartedly with you on that it's like, we need to take the responsibility and the power back as human beings to like love each other and unite each other.
God, yeah. It's funny because people will tell you who to hate. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't have to. You could go find out for yourself if you actually hate them.
Yeah.
There's this thing people do, for example, where I there was some places I was thinking about playing here in the state of Pennsylvania. Some of them like Northwest, some further just straight up north, and country, very country places. And I get this same thing where people are like, be careful up there. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Be careful of what? And they won't come out and say it. I'm like, so, but for anyone, be careful because I'm black, because I'm going somewhere where there's white people who might be voting for Trump or some other shit.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, but did you go and talk to them to find out just how ready they are to lynch me? Because I've not had bad experiences, which is the truth of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I have conversations with those folks, I just find out that they're like me in many ways, and then in some they're not. You know, and honestly, the ones who do have problems with black people, it's actually more of a culture issue. And that's one thing we actually share in common. And this is what it is. It's that there's not even all black people like all black people. You know, Nigerians, Ethiopians, some people from Africa don't bang with some of these people, some of the black people here in America who are like hood niggas, like to be frank, you know, their culture is like, their culture is much different. That's what I'll say. You know, sometimes I watch some of these videos, especially recently, you know, with people in the recent years, people in these black communities beating the fuck out of cars and breaking shit and twerking on cars and mobbing the street like they did here in Philadelphia. And that's not entirely representative of black people as a whole in this country. I want to make that crystal clear. Yeah. But also, I'm going to call a thing, you know, and I understand why people could be irritated by that, especially white people living in some other part of the state or other part of the country who are observing this and like, why are these people acting like goddamn hooligans? You know, my parents raised me, I think, pretty goddamn well. So I'm unapologetic when it comes to calling a thing, you know, and that's not helpful to black people that they're doing that. And honestly, we should be helping those communities so they're not doing stupid shit like that. But going back to people just talking to other people you don't know or disagree with, it's the only way. It is literally the only way to get what you want out of this life and this society, is to find out precisely where you agree and precisely where you disagree. And it's beautiful. You learn so much. You learn much more from people you don't agree with. You'll get bored really quick talking to the same people about the same things.
That's one of my beefs with the cancel culture. Okay, my brain's getting distracted because there's a bunch of subtopics coming for this. So let me just start with the one I started with. That's one of my beefs with the cancel culture. And I know the cancel culture talk is overdone. It's a buzzword at this point. Yeah. But if we're talking like free speech, cancel culture, et cetera, censorship, one of my beefs with that is like for Twitter, for example. I feel like ever since Elon Musk bought out Twitter, a lot of the left has left Twitter, right? Why would you want to separate like, why wouldn't you want a platform where there's a mix of ideas in that? That would be so boring. Like, as a YouTuber, I want people to like comment on my comment section and be like, hey, I don't agree with you. I'm glad that my friend reached out to me and said, hey, I don't agree with something you said in your video. I want to discuss it. That's interesting. I don't want a platform where everybody agrees with each other. That's fucking boring. That seems like a waste of time, and that's fucking boring. But the subtopic I was thinking about was, but then again, we're sitting here and saying that different ideas should exist in different states. So it's maybe a little bit hypocritical for me to say I want a mix of ideas online, but in real life I want separate states. Like, that's a little bit of a contradiction. I guess what I'm saying.
Because there's like Austin, which is in Texas,
right?
You know, and it's like red state with a blue city. So I think,
even Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a swing state, right? So Pennsylvania has Philadelphia, and I'm sure what's the other big city in Philadelphia? Or, I mean, in Pennsylvania, it's
shit.
Why can't I think of it right now? Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a huge city. I'm assuming it's probably a left city. So, but yeah, you're right. If you put it that way, it's not like the states are just. Some of the states, like especially Pennsylvania, Texas, etc., have such a big mix. I mean, like, speaking of different countries, like being in Philadelphia, I guarantee you if you drive a couple hours away in a different part of Pennsylvania, you're going to be in a different country of Pennsylvania, you know? So it's super interesting.
Amish country.
Yeah, you're going to, exactly. You're going to see the Amish. I wonder who they're voting for.
Okay, so I do. I've seen some things and I'm like, is this AI where they're riding around with Trump for Amish? And I'm like, but I thought they didn't vote. I don't know. I don't know.
Here's a question I have, because we live in Philadelphia. There's a lot of homeless people here. Do homeless people vote?
That's, you know what? Wow. That's a good question. Whoo, That's a good question. Because if they do, I wonder which way they vote. I was going to assume, but I think that's me being extremely biased, to be fair. Because I was just going to do the bullshit where I'm like, yeah, they're definitely voting Democrat. But I don't know that.
Maybe I should do an impromptu podcast episode where I walk around Kensington and interview the homeless people.
Yo, you can do it. Hey, yo, what's up, bro?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. I've thought of doing that because I've seen YouTubers do that. They like walk around Kensington and interview people. And sometimes it's really fascinating. I mean, I guess as a female, I'd be worried about the safety of me doing that.
That's fair.
Or like maybe I can stay like right on the border where Kensington and Fishtown meet. It's not as bad there. Because to be quite honest, I have gone there before to like, I remember one time I was like getting rid of a bunch of clothes when I switched apartments. Because I've always lived in Fishtown in Philly, but I lived in a different apartment before. And I put on some weight this year. So like all my small clothes didn't fit me anymore. And I'm like, there's so many homeless people. And legit, like my friends kind of laugh at this, but they also think it's nice. I found like a group of prostitutes and I gave them, I like brought them my clothes and they were so grateful. Like, cause I know there's a lot of prostitutes in Kensington cause that's how they get their money for whatever food and drugs. And I knew where they hang out and everything like that. And I went there and I'm like, hey, do you ladies, need some clothes? And they were like, oh my God, please. And they were like, God bless you. I hope God blesses you. Like they were so grateful for it. So I'm like, I'm glad I didn't just throw these clothes in the trash because, they smell like they don't have a place to shower. So just a fresh pair of clothes is a big deal for them, Fuck. And same thing. I remember one time I was, throwing away different food items because I was switching my diet and I'm like, I'm gonna give this to the homeless people. So I went in Kensington and I saw this this black homeless guy. He was like trying to get food out of the garbage and I'm like, hey, I got food here. And at first he was like, do I gotta heat it up? And I'm like, no, it's like peanut butter and stuff like that. And I'm like, are you gonna share it with your friends? He was like, hell no. And he was
God
like,
damn.
no, I'm not sharing it with my friends. But anyways, I'm bringing that up to say, not to sound like I'm so moral. That's not why I'm bringing it up. The reason I'm bringing it up is that I have interacted with some homeless people that are like right on the border of Fishtown and Kensington, and I didn't feel unsafe. I think it's, I mean, it's a little dirty, but it's not unsafe necessarily. I think you have to really go deeper into Kensington to like get shot at.
Well, that and also like, going there at night, much different. Yeah. It's still a mess. It's so funny because I keep finding I want so many positive things to talk about. Yeah. Like, because I mean that makes me feel good to hear things like that. Yeah. I just wonder what is the solution for something long term.
Yeah, because folks. I help those people out for the day, and I even thought of that myself. I was like, if I give this guy food, am I just feeding him so he could have the energy to get more drugs? What's the right solution? But then I thought about it. I'm like, you really never know when some person, like, I don't think what I did is going to help. I don't think that's the solution for everybody, but there just might be a small percentage of people that an act of kindness could maybe convince them to get clean. Yeah. Maybe or at least get the wheels turning. Like, hey, I got hooked up today. Maybe God is watching me or something like that. Maybe I should get my life together. Now, again, I don't think that's the solution for everybody. It's probably not going to work for most people, but there just might be like a 1%, 2% chance that it might get the wheels turning in somebody's head, That and some incentives. Yeah. I feel like getting the incentives right too, so people aren't looking forward to just living on the street, because it certainly doesn't help that that's an incentive where you get paid like that in some states. What is it, California? Where some people are actually have moved just to be homeless, which is very interesting. Weird times. So going back to the event, because we need to bring this aspect of the event. You did the event on mushrooms. Oh yeah. What? Why did you go to this Free the Republic event on mushrooms? What inspired you to do that? I have no good answer for that. I really wish I did. I wish I had an interesting answer, but because it's not like, I think I can count on one hand how many times I've dropped mushrooms in my life. Yeah. But I'm like, whatever. I'm there with my my brother and our bud Nick, and we're just hanging out. So just take the train in. We get there. I didn't sleep, by the way, this entire weekend, so I was up for 48 hours and some change. I'm jealous of your ability to do that because literally, listeners, I'm laying on the couch right now while I do this podcast because I had bad sleep. So I'm really jealous of your ability to like function because you were telling me that you're a high functioning insomniac. So
like I don't even know how, I was like, oh my god, I might die. But yeah, we get a quick breakfast and then it was like that. We go for a run and then we get back to the house and some mushrooms come out. We're like, we doing this, boys?
Wow.
So yeah, and it's funny because I don't know what we were expecting. I'm just like, we're in DC. I'm hanging with two of my favorite people. I was like, let's just have a fun day because it's like I'm not gonna go there and just be like, all right, this is it's a serious thing, but to me it's a joyful thing too because I love being a fucking American. I was like, this is American shit. Hang with your boys, go out, meet a bunch of other people who are like-minded in their principles, and just have some fun and meet cool folks. And so went out there
and they say that psychedelics are like unifying. Like I've never gotten to do psychedelics, but I've heard other people say that when they do, I don't know if you've had this experience, but some people tell me when they do mushrooms and acid and that sort of thing that you end up having like a unified trip with your friends. Like sometimes you experience the same sensations and that because it's like the same mushrooms. I don't know if you can relate to that at all.
I feel like, there's got to be something to that. So for example, Nick lives there in the city. And he would speak to the architecture, and he was speaking to the architecture before we even took the mushrooms, So as we're walking, like he would constantly have this thing. He says, "Look up." He's like, "Yeah, I always forget to look up, but I'm getting better at it now." And you look up and you look at the crests and everything on these buildings. It's fucking insane, the architecture, and especially when the city is beautifully designed, by the way, and purposely designed that way. When Washington D.C. was founded, like you look at how all the roads lead straight to some of these places like Congress, and it's awesome. It's like this view just starts to converge, and you're looking at the architecture as you're walking, just like going by. And obviously, I'm on drugs, so it's times 10. It feels amazing, and we're pointing it out to each other. One of us nods at the other one without speaking. We're like, "Yeah, I know, dude. This is dope." But it's gorgeous out there. It's gorgeous, gorgeous architecture.
Did you have any, because I know that mushrooms sometimes inspire some type of profound insight. Did you have any profound insights show up as you were high on mushrooms at not the White House, but was it right at the White House that they did this?
No, it was, this was right in front of the Washington Monument.
Okay, so in front of the Washington
that giant obelisk thing.
Gotcha. Any insights like that came up to you during this time?
One of them, I was like, we might get blown up.
You meant at the event or just in general?
Oh no, at the event.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's like, I'm not even joking too. We were like, I was like, wait, a bunch of people who all agree with each other from different like belief systems.
Yeah.
I was like, man, if I was malevolent, I would bomb the fuck out of these motherfuckers. But no, but that really just that, and I would say, what other insights? I can't think of. What else would I think of? Nothing pops out at me immediately because I think while that was going on, we had so many different conversations, but those conversations were about the same ones we would have when we were sober.
Yeah.
So we're extremely close, like my brother and I, and then Nick, I'm getting to know more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would say, I don't want to pull something out of my ass and say, it's like, we had these.
You didn't have any,
like,
you just kind of felt more open in general.
Yeah, it's like, because it was like, I wasn't like tripping balls or anything crazy, but just enough to just really have a good time. And also you're looking at the ground because you're like, holy shit, I can see every detail. This is insane. But
is that what happens? Like your sensations, you can just notice more details in your surroundings?
Oh yeah, visually, it's awesome. It's awesome. You're looking at the ground. You're like, oh, it's not even. There was that Rick and Morty episode where Rick tells Morty, he's like, you don't know what perfect level is, and then he makes perfect level for him and puts Morty on. He says, step here, and he's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my god, nothing's straight, or whatever. But it's amazing. It's amazing. Like, you look at the ground, you can see all the details, the curvature, where things aren't perfectly flush on buildings, architecture, lines, your perception of lines. It's insanely acute. Like, it's really cool. Like, I highly recommend it as a drug. Just don't do too many, obviously.
Yeah. I still have yet to do mushrooms. I tried it one. I think I might have told you this the last time, but I should say it again so the listeners know. I tried to do mushrooms one time in my life.
Tried.
So I took a pretty heavy dose too. My friends, shout out to Tracy and her boyfriend. I was going to say husband, but I guess they're not married. So just boyfriend, partner, we could say. Tracy and her partner, Nerdy Film Girl, her name is on YouTube. Check her out. She invited me over and she was like, do you want to come to my house for a mushroom dance party? And it was literally just me, her, and her boyfriend. So it was like just us for the dance party. And I was like, I've never done mushrooms in my entire life. And I'm like, is this a good idea for me to just do it casually like this without being prepared? She's like, yeah, like we'll watch you, whatever. She gave me a pretty good dose and they were feeling it clearly, like within an hour. And I'm just waiting. I'm like, they're like, are you feeling it? Are you feeling it? I'm like, I mean, your entire apartment is decorated in neon lights. I don't know if that's the mushrooms or that's just the way your apartment looks. I'm waiting. Nothing. And it's like, I don't know what just happened. And as a matter of fact, that night, the only thing that it did to me was keep me up. Like I couldn't fall asleep. Like it gave me energy, but I didn't trip at all. And as a matter of fact, that night I did my taxes. That's
okay. What the fuck? What? Okay. Good.
And then
that's
not what it's supposed to happen when you do mushrooms. So the next day, I like looked it up. I'm like, why? When I did mushrooms, did nothing happen? I found out it's because if you're on antidepressants, which I was, sertraline, there's often a time where. So sertraline affects your serotonin levels, and that's also what mushrooms do. Yeah. Because the sertraline is already doing that, it sometimes blocks the effect of mushrooms. So, and as a matter of fact, I didn't know this till later, it can potentially be dangerous to do mushrooms while you're taking antidepressants because either it's going to block it out, or if it doesn't block it out, it might overstimulate your serotonin levels and it could kill you actually. So like I was on I think that's rare. It's a very rare case. You would have to be on like a high dose of antidepressants and take a lot of mushrooms for something like that to happen. But thankfully for me, I didn't have any dangerous effects. I just had nothing happen to me. So now in the future, if I ever want to do mushrooms, I have to not take my antidepressants for a few days probably. Like I don't think it takes that long to get out of your system. Probably like 2-3 days of not taking my antidepressants, which is fine. Yeah. Like I've missed a couple doses before and you don't like get depressed. It takes like a few weeks to really get depressed if you go off antidepressants. So I think I want to try that. Now my biggest fear is like, because it's something I've never experienced before, I don't know how I'm going to act. So I feel like I need a babysitter and I'm like, who is going to be my babysitter if I lose my shit on mushrooms? Like, I don't want it to be my parents. Like, my parents are open-minded, by the way, about that type of thing. Like, they've been reading a lot about like psychedelics and how it helps mental health. So I know they would do it, but like, what am I gonna like? But
have they done them before?
They haven't done them before, no. But they said they would babysit me. Like, they don't care, and they didn't say that, but I know they would if I asked them. But that's just weird. I don't want to be high around my parents like that. Like, what if I have a revelation and I'm like, you screwed up my life as a child?
Okay, that's what I mean. And they haven't done them before. That might make it worse.
I don't like. What if I do it with a friend and then I'm just like, you know what? I'm in love with you, and I try to kiss them. Like, I'm just like, I haven't like even a female, male. I don't know. And then I'm just like, I don't know how I'm gonna react, so I don't know who to be the babysitter. So I'm like, it's just a situation that I'm overthinking it. Maybe I need to just get like a close friend do it and just take like a microdose to start out or something.
That's probably good. No, that's a good route. That's a good route. Like, if you're hanging with somebody you trust and they're cool as shit, you know, like if their energy is right, like when you're sober, like just when you're just hanging out normally, they're probably going to be great for that. Yeah. You know, it's like just chill people. Because even when you're like, all that happens is when you're really, really high, you're like, oh yeah, I'm tripping here. And it's just chill.
I have like a weird phobia of not being in control of my body around other people. And I'm trying to figure out like mentally why I even have this, but I even have it on my day to day. Like when you invited me to the event, the Save the Republic event, I didn't go because I was having health issues that week. And the idea of being around people while I was uncomfortable made me anxious. And it's just this like weird phobia I have about like, I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to ask for help from people. And there's something wrong with that. There's like something there that I haven't figured out like deeply. But like, that's one of my fears about getting high around people. I'm like, if I'm uncomfortable, I don't want anyone to know it. Like it's such a weird phobia I have, and I don't understand why I have it. It's like, it's just very strange. Like I don't like even when someone says, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, "I don't know, am I?" Like I'm like, like I don't like people knowing I'm uncomfortable. I hate it, and it's a very strange thing. Like I don't understand it. Like I think I need to go to therapy or something to figure out like why I have that. You know?
I wonder, or throw yourself right in.
Because here's the funny thing too. When I really think about it, if I like got sick on mushrooms and felt like I was gonna faint or something, it would make sense if there were people there. Like I should be comfortable around other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But for some reason, like I'm more comfortable with the idea of just dying alone than to somebody know.
Well, I don't know. Is that over it? I'm not diagnosing you here, and like obviously I'm not your therapist. I don't know. Is that over there? Maybe you might be.
It could be a trust thing because I've been trying to think about it. Maybe I'm like afraid. Maybe I'm afraid to rely on other people because maybe I like don't trust that other people will take care of me or something. Yeah. I don't know if that's it, but I'm just kind of like trying to. This is funny. I'm like laying on the couch, like while you're sitting in a chair. It's like you're the therapist. Yeah. No. I think that's the best thing I can come up with is that I'm afraid to rely on people. So it's like safer for me to rely on myself. You know.
I could get down with that, especially if you're. I mean, yeah. Like if you're comfortable with the decision making and everything for yourself, you're like, no, I've done this for me, so I know what I need. Yeah. Yeah, I could get that. I could get that.
But yeah, the idea of like making an ass out of myself on mushrooms is like it's like my biggest nightmare. But I want to get over it.
You should. Yeah. Okay. So like on that note, you should jump into it because it immediately, like kind of the same thing with weed. The moment I was able to do dumb shit on weed against my will. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't care anymore. Like sometimes you say and do dumb stuff. Like by the way, the amount of wild, crazy, dumb shit I said while like we were on mushrooms walking through the city, just talking shit. Yeah. I mean, abominable stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, you do make a fool of yourself in earshot of other people, or you do dumb stuff, or you stare into space or at people directly, like uncomfortably, or even the interview we did where I couldn't stop staring at that girl's makeup.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God. That was, I should have canceled that. RFK was speaking when that was happening. Yeah. But these two girls, these two women walk up and just ask if we want to do an interview. And I'm like, you know, I immediately, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I forget immediately because I'm just like wanting to be helpful that I'm fucking just nuked out of my gourd. Not that much.
I watched the interview. You sent me the link and I was very impressed. Like, first of all, the listeners, he has a twin brother. So I couldn't tell which one was him and which one was his twin brother because you were wearing a hat and I've never seen you wear a hat. And I was so confused because I knew the sound of your voice. I'm like, well, that one sounds like you, but doesn't look anything like you. And that one looks like you, but doesn't sound like you. And then I thought your brother was you. And then I thought the whole time I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, he's so high. Was he on mushrooms too though?
Oh, all three of us.
Oh, okay. So that makes more sense now because I just remember watching him thinking it was you because you were like watching my face and I'm like, wow, he's really out of his fucking mind because he was just
you were so high.
The whole time he was just like standing because you were speaking first and I thought you were very well articulated. So I thought that was you or I thought that was your brother because you said you were high and I'm looking at your what I now know is your brother and he's his eye, he was like a bird, like his eyes were going back and forth, like his head was just turning constantly back and forth and I'm like, man, he's fucked up out of his gourd right now.
I was surprised they used it too because like I did go on their YouTube page. I did not see other interviews like from the event, although I did ask them after the interview ended. I was like, how's it been going today, you know, how many people did you speak to and like how was that? And they only said like a handful of people, apparently. So I guess maybe people were just like, we're just trying to focus. Or maybe everyone was like fucking on mushrooms like us.
Yeah.
And we're like, fuck this.
That's so interesting. Wow.
But,
okay. I do want to say one more thing about the weed thing. And then I want to ask more questions about the event, though, because I have questions about RFK.
oh, yeah.
But one more thing about the weed, like going back to like feeling uncomfortable around people. I can't even smoke weed. Like, I don't really smoke weed much anymore, but anytime I did it, I would have to do it alone because of that same feeling. I remember, like, I always try to experiment. Like, maybe this is the year I'll be uncomfortable with it. And I was dating this guy, Robbie, at the time. Shout out to Robbie. And it was like me, him, and his brother. And his brother was a big pothead. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it.
Robbie.
Yeah. Shout out to Robbie and his brother, Tommy. Tommy was like, why don't we all smoke weed together? And I'm like, all right, maybe this is the year that I'll be able to handle it kind of thing. So I tried it. And I remember, like, I took a big hit that made, you can fill up my coffee too, actually, by the way. He got up to get some coffee and I'm like, you can fill mine up. I took one of those big hits that makes you cough a lot. And I was like, oh, fuck, I just did myself in. Like, when you take a hit of weed that, do you mind grabbing the almond milk too?
You got it.
Listeners, we're pouring some coffee. I'm going to get video back eventually. I have to save up for a new laptop. But anyways, I took one of those hits that made me cough a lot. And I was like, oh, fuck, I did myself in. And within a few minutes, like almost instantly, actually, I got really high. And the thing was, I wasn't even thinking anything that weird. I was just having weird thoughts about my cell phone. I was like obsessed with my cell phone. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this powerful thing is in my pocket. This is crazy. And as I'm thinking this, I'm wondering if everybody else in the group circle notices I'm thinking too much. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to know. It was like, because when I say that out sober,
they're gonna know
I'm
I'm
like,
high.
Yeah. When I say
they're going to judge me for being high.
When I say that sober, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, they're going to know I'm thinking. Like, why would I be afraid of people knowing I'm thinking? But like, I just remember thinking like, how, like, I was just like, how do I have, like, it was, I was holding my cell phone. I'm like, how do I have this in my pocket? Like, this is crazy. And funny thing, I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. This is how I discovered Joe Rogan. So my boyfriend, Robbie, at the time, I told him, I was like, I have to go. I'm like, I need to go in my own private room. I'm overwhelmed. I can't be around people. And he was like, he came in to like check on me and visit me. And he was like, here, watch some stand up that might relax you. And he plopped like a Joe Rogan stand up special on me. And he didn't even purposely pick this special because of the conversation I was having about the phone. He didn't even know I was having that conversation because I was saying it in my head and not telling anybody. And one of the opening jokes was, I can't believe we have this amazing thing in our pocket. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Someone gets me.
Yeah, I was like so confused. I'm like, how is my high thought that's giving me all this paranoia, like he's saying the joke like exactly the way I'm thinking it? And not only that, but the first thing he said in the podcast was, I'm so fucking high right now. Or not in the podcast, in the special, he was like, what's up, LA? I'm so high right now. How could a gummy bear's like foot steal your soul? That was like his opening joke. And then he followed up with like the cell phone bit. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, he's high on gummy bears and he's thinking of the cell phone too. It was just such a bizarre experience. And that's when I started listening to Joe Rogan, because I was like, I guess like we have some things in common, like because we like both went down like the same train of thought there. But anyways, all that was a long-winded description to say that I have this weird phobia of like people watching me or knowing me. And
has anyone ever commented like, have your worst fears ever been confirmed? And someone's like, what are you thinking about?
No one's ever like, I can see you're thinking. Like, I can see. The only one that I don't like is when people say, are you okay? I hate that.
Okay,
like,
that drives me crazy even when I'm not on drugs.
Yeah. When people are like, are you okay? I'm like, do I look like I'm not okay? Like, yeah. I'm like,
oh God. Yeah. That is the worst thing to do to someone.
But yeah, you're right. Not a single person has ever been like, I know you're uncomfortable.
I'm going to start doing that to people. Honestly, I just want to see if one day I'm just going to see if I can ruin someone's high.
You should start doing it to me like, Andrew, are you uncomfortable?
Are you uncomfortable? I feel like you're uncomfortable.
Maybe I just need exposure therapy. Maybe I need people to like call me out on it and be like, I know your brain is going.
Okay, so Joe Rogan gets that shit right. Like getting blitzed in uncomfortable situations is really helpful, because then you're like, oh wait, I didn't die.
He goes to the airport high. He says that he loves it. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I was like, that sounds dope. It's like, also it is fun as fuck. It's like, holy shit, I might die, but it's also it's fucking exciting like that. Or even just going up before I do a performance, like obliterated. I'm like, I don't remember how to play. But it's fun.
Dude, I need to fix my problems, because like it's such a when I really break it down, it's such a ridiculous fear. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't make any sense. It's so illogical. But anyways, okay, going back to the RFK thing. So RFK and Tulsi Gabbard were two very popular speakers at this event. They were probably like the highlights of the event, I would say. RFK gets a lot of shade right now from a lot of different people as a conspiracy theorist, etc. Meanwhile, a lot of people love him. So what's your take on that? Why do you like RFK? Why are you not in the camp that he's a conspiracy theorist? What do you like about him? And etc.
You know what? I really enjoy that he focuses, unlike Kamala and unlike Trump. He focuses on the issues at hand. Because when I started watching his interviews, which by the way, I started watching his interviews precisely because people said he's a crazy fuck. And I noticed this pattern with myself. The moment someone says this person's bad, this person's crazy, this person's evil, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna go find out for myself. So like, and it's strange because I start to realize now people don't do that. I was at a Super Bowl party and RFK comes up because of political commercials, and this was this last February. And when RFK comes up and everyone starts talking shit, and one of the kids, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, have you ever listened to him speak? He's like, no. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I looked at him, I looked at his woman, I was like, why are you with him? Like, I was like, what kind of man are you? I was like, you don't look into shit for yourself, and then you make judgments that deep about it. So I look into him. I start listening, and I'm like, well, first of all, this dude knows what he's talking about. He's the same guy who cleaned up the Hudson for all the green crowd out there who cares so much about the goddamn earth. I'm like, he put his neck out and actually helped unite these fishermen and all sorts of other people to get this thing cleaned up. He was also speaking about the vaccine issues, right? Where that's where he does often get called a conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, at this point, we all know how many conspiracies have ended up being true, which is why I'm always interested in them, because I'm like, I wonder which ones are and aren't. Vaccines, very interesting. It's a touchy subject.
That one caused a lot of division during the time. To me, that's where it all started for me losing trust in the left. And it started from the Joe Rogan podcast, because I had that story I told you where I started listening to Joe Rogan while I was high, thinking about cell phones. That started years, like maybe 2 or 3 years before he was a prominent, controversial figure in politics because of 2020. So I always just liked him because I thought he was open-minded. I thought he was funny. He was mostly liberal, really. Like, he had a lot of liberal views. Like, he was pro-abortion. He was I don't want to say endorsed Bernie Sanders, because I'm not sure if he paid money for him, but he publicly announced that he wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. He wanted to forgive student loan debt, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, and he was such a cool guy. He had all these different people on his podcast, and you didn't feel like you were listening to corporate businessmen in suits. You felt like you were listening to people have a full conversation. Yep. And I say this all the time. I'm like him or not, that is such a profound, like, revolutionary impact on media today. I mean, he has affected media and changed the direction of how media works now, because people just don't feel right listening to CNN and Fox, and they all feel it intuitively. So maybe Joe Rogan isn't the best person to be having these difficult conversations. I'll say that, but he at least started moving things in the right direction. Okay.
Yeah.
So where I started losing trust in the left was, again, I had been listening to him for so long. I knew he was a good person. I trusted he was a good person, and I loved his podcast. It was only this one issue that he really wasn't maybe guns. He was actually a little bit conservative with guns, but between guns and the vaccines, this was really just one issue where he leaned more conservative. And actually, by the way, not even entirely conservative, because when you follow his storyline of why he started having debates about the vaccine, he actually was planning to get vaccinated. He was very compassionate about this. He was the first one who was like, I wanted to go out and do my stand up, but I don't want to hurt anybody. And he had he was supposed to have an appointment to get a vaccine, and the day he had the appointment to get the vaccine, it was Johnson & Johnson taken off the shelves. When that happened, it freaked him out. And so his whole idea was to just have public debates about the vaccine. That's really all it was. People want to throw out the word anti-vaxxer. He's killing people, like all this crazy stuff. That's when I started losing trust in the left, because I'm like, there is nothing that can convince me that anything he did, like any series of events that he did, is harmful for the public. This is a new vaccine, and people deserve the right to discuss their potential. If anything, the appropriate term for him isn't anti-vaxxer. It's maybe vax skeptic. Like he's confused, vax confusion. And I think that's a normal, healthy, like if I didn't hear any news whatsoever and I wasn't affected by any news sources on this issue, my very first instinct was, I'll take a vaccine. But that was quick. Like that's my first instinct is like, hey, I'm not opposed to taking a vaccine, but that was fast. Like, can we just wait a little bit to see, what's going on and what are the potential side effects? And that was really his whole mission. He was not an anti-vaxxer. He just wanted to know the facts, the whole picture about the vaccine. Now, when CNN started telling straight up lies about him, that's when I started stepping back. And I was like, wait a second. Like if the left wants to have a conversation that maybe this man shouldn't be talking about these issues because he's a stand-up comedian, that's a fair debate. We can have that debate. But if CNN wants to actually make lies about him, they started making videos saying that he was taking horse tranquilizer, ivermectin, horse tranquilizer, and it was total bullshit. And he actually he did take ivermectin, but in a nutshell, calling it horse tranquilizer would be like me saying they have not antidepressants, they have painkillers. They have painkillers for cats. Those exist. I take I don't take them now, but I've taken painkillers in the past for like dentist issues. That would be like making the story that Andrea went to the dentist and now she's taking cat painkillers because they exist for cats also. Joe Rogan was diagnosed by a doctor. Ivermectin that is treatable for human beings, not just horses. The whole idea that it was horse tranquilizer was it was made up bullshit. And he actually invited a CNN worker on his podcast. His name is Sanjay Gupta. I actually liked him. I thought he was a really nice guy. He openly admitted that CNN lied. He works for CNN. He's like, CNN should not have done that. He's like, that was a lie. He admitted it. So there's no secret about it. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is fact. They lied about it. And someone from CNN openly admitted he lied about it. So when that happened, that's when I kind of pulled back and I was like, wait a second. I know this stuff is not true. Like, because I've been watching his podcast, and sure, you want to have the conversation that maybe he's not the appropriate person to have these conversations. Sure, we can talk about that. You want to straight up lie and try to take him down, though? That's where you've got me. And that's kind of what pushed me in the other direction, where I'm like, okay, if they're lying about him, who else are they lying about? Like, you know what I mean? And that's not to say that I think everything that they say about Trump is a lie either. I mean, I certainly think there probably, most likely, definitely is some truth to the sex scandals and whatnot. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of truth to the sex scandals, etc. But I'm at least going to keep my mind a little more open to the idea that what's the entire truth? Because we're only getting parts of the truth. I mean, I could sit here and say they're not entirely lying about Joe Rogan either. I could say that they're exaggerating the truth a lot. You know what I mean? Because he was talking about vaccines on his podcast, but the extreme exaggerations to take people down, that's where I kind of like take a step back and I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this as information to now question who else are they doing this to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, sorry, that was like a really long rant, but
no, you're okay. So no, you really summed up like basically what got me during COVID. I remember, so I want to be crystal clear. I forged my card. The second shot, I forged that shit. That's how much I railed against this bullshit. I got the first one.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli speaking. I'm just here to let the listeners know that this is a 2-part episode. If you are just getting to this video the first week it was released, you may have to wait till next week to see the second part of this episode. However, if you are finding this video after it was released, then the second part of this video might already be ready right now on my channel. Just check on my channel and scroll and look for part 2 of this episode. Also, a quick reminder to the listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to be a full-time podcaster, and every single subscriber really helps me reach my mission. Have a good day, guys. Bye.